The FIFA World Cup is a massive event that many people watch worldwide. But after the excitement is over, what do they do with the big stadiums? Today, we'll look at what's happening to World Cup stadiums in Russia, Brazil, and South Africa after the games are done. We'll also see how Qatar is handling this and find out why they're already taking apart one of their stadiums. Welcome to Superstructures. In the past 10 years, Qatar has gone to great lengths to create a whole World Cup setup. They've built modern stadiums, top-notch training facilities, and better transportation connections. The total cost of all this is over $200 billion, an enormous amount. This is way more money than any previous host country spent. The main reason is that Qatar had to build most of this from the ground up. To put in perspective, 4 years before that, Russia spent around $16 billion, and Brazil spent $20 billion in 2014. However, even $20 billion is a lot of money, especially when you consider that the entire World Cup event lasts for less than a month. But countries hope that the World Cup infrastructure will bring them long-term benefits. The improved transportation can boost underdeveloped areas, and stadiums can pay for themselves by hosting concerts and other events. It's a grand vision, lively venues that continue to serve purposes long after the games. But as history has shown, it doesn't always work out that way. Before we dive into Qatar's unique plans, let's first take a look at the not-so-pretty history of World Cup stadiums, the challenges they've posed, and what Qatar is striving to avoid. So, what happened in the past World Cups? Before the 2018 World Cup in Russia, they made 9 new stadiums and fixed up 3 old ones. It's tough to say exactly how much it all cost, but it was a big part of the $16 billion that Russia spent on the whole event. After the World Cup ended, Russia tried to rent these stadiums to local soccer teams. It seemed like a good idea because the stadiums were made for games, and the money from tickets could help pay for them. But this plan didn't work out. Russian teams don't have many fans, and they can't sell many tickets. For example, at the Fisht Olympic Stadium in Sochi, the local team only gets about 6,000 fans on average, which is just 15% of the stadium's total capacity. With so few people coming to the games, it's hard to pay for the stadium's costs. The stadiums are losing money, and taxpayers have to pay for them. People call them white elephants, which means they're expensive, useless, and a big burden. About a year after the World Cup, the Kaliningrad Stadium started sinking into a swamp, and it took nearly $1 million to rescue it. If we look at it from a money perspective, it might have been smarter to just let the Kaliningrad Stadium fall apart. Out of the 9 new stadiums in Russia, only 1 is doing well after the World Cup. The Kazan Arena has become a place for all sorts of things, like soccer games, concerts, car shows, and fashion events. It even has restaurants, bars, and hotel rooms. Maybe the secret to long-term success is to change the stadium into something completely new. But did other countries do the same thing? Brazil hosted the World Cup 40 years before Russia, and their stadium story is quite similar. Many of the stadiums are used by local teams, but they have lots of empty seats. Brazil loves football, but their stadiums are just too big to fill. One of the most striking examples is the Arena de Amazônia in Manaus. It's supposed to hold 40,000 people, but only about 1,000 show up for local games. It's losing a lot of money, more than $200,000 each month. To try to cover costs, they turned another World Cup stadium, the Estadio Nacional, into a bus stop. The Arena das Dunas is even hosting weddings and children's parties to make money. It sounds even worse when you think that some of these stadiums only had 4 World Cup games. Was it all worth it for just 6 hours of football? Brazilian taxpayers don't think so. A quarter of the country is living in poverty, and they'd rather see their taxes used for other things. As a Brazilian reporter named Jose Cruz said in 2015, "I don't see any World Cup legacy for Brazil, except the debts we've been left with." 4 years before Russia, the World Cup happened in South Africa. Their stadiums are doing a bit better than the ones in Russia and Brazil. The Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban is now used for many things, like events and music concerts. People can even ride a sky car to the top of the big arch and do bungee jumping. But not all South Africa's stadiums are doing well. The Cape Town Stadium, with 65,000 seats, has never made money. Some people are even saying they should tear it down, and that might happen sooner or later. Qatar is really trying not to make the same mistakes as past World Cups, especially because their bid to host the event was surrounded by lots of problems. About 30 FIFA officials had to step down because they were found involved in corruption and bribery. Things got even worse in 2013, when Amnesty International said that migrant workers in Qatar were treated very badly. Many of them were paid very little or not paid at all, and they had to work in dangerous conditions. In 2021, The Guardian newspaper did an investigation and estimated that more than 6,000 workers had died in Qatar since they got the World Cup bid. This has damaged Qatar's reputation a lot, but the one thing they haven't been criticized for is their plans for what to do with the World Cup stadiums after the tournament ends. Qatar's plans for the World Cup stadiums are quite unique. It might seem irrational for such a small country to have 8 colossal stadiums. To give you an idea, Qatar has around 400,000 citizens, but the stadiums can hold around 420,000 people. In comparison, Russia has about 140 million people, and Brazil has around 220 million. If those countries can't fill their stadiums, Qatar wouldn't stand a chance. However, Qatar isn't trying to fill them with regular sports events. Instead, they want to transform these stadiums. 2 of the stadiums, Lusail and Al Bayt, will be changed into modern multi-purpose places. In Lusail Stadium, most of the seats will be taken out to make space for shops, cafes, a school, a health clinic, and maybe even some apartments. Al Bayt will go through a similar process, becoming a 5-star hotel, a shopping mall, and a hospital. Both stadiums will keep the field, but they'll mainly be used for community events rather than professional football matches. 3 more of the stadiums, Ahmad bin Ali, Al Janoub, and Al Thumama Stadium, will still be used for football matches, but they'll become much smaller. Their capacity will be cut from 45,000 down to 20,000 by taking out temporary seats. This is similar to what was done in Russia, where they added temporary stands to the Yekaterinburg Central Stadium. Qatar has also promised to give away the temporary seating to other countries that want to improve their sports facilities. These smaller 20,000-seat stadiums might have trouble filling up because the Qatari Football League sometimes only has a few hundred people in the stands. Stadium 974 is a really innovative solution. It's the first completely temporary stadium in World Cup history. They built it using 974 recycled shipping containers. And the amazing thing is that it can be taken apart and put back together somewhere else. This is a groundbreaking way to think about sports facilities, and it's something that future World Cups could do too. Instead of making new stadiums in each host country, they could use a set of temporary stadiums that can be moved around from one place to another. It's a smart and sustainable approach to hosting big sports events. Qatar has plans to make the most of its World Cup infrastructure for future events. This is similar to what Brazil did in 2016 when they hosted the Summer Olympics and used 5 of their former World Cup stadiums. However, when the Olympics ended, not much changed. In 2024, Qatar is going to host the Asian Cup, which is an international football tournament for teams in Asia and Oceania. They'll also host the 2030 Asian Games and the World Athletics Championships, which will have more participants than the Olympics. For these events, they're trying to use their World Cup facilities as much as possible, so the projects don't go to waste. They're also looking at hosting the Olympics, possibly in 2036, but we'll have to wait and see if these plans work out. One of their plans is already happening. After hosting a match between Brazil and South Korea on December 5th, they started taking apart Stadium 974. There's talk that the pieces of the stadium will be sent to Uruguay, which hopes to host the 2030 World Cup. So, what are your thoughts on mobile stadiums like these for future World Cups? Share your opinions in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Superstructures for more fascinating content. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.